references joy and how he talks about this constant admonition to rejoice. One such example is Philippians 4:4, where he says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I'll say rejoice. He's in prison. He's been beaten many times for the name of Christ. On and on you can go, and he's talking about joy. He's talking about his joy in the Lord, because the joy is anchored in things that aren't based on circumstances. I heard someone say one time, happiness is based on circumstances. And so if circumstances are difficult, I might not be really happy today. But that's not what joy is about. Joy is something deeper. Because of joy in the Lord, I can still have that when I'm having a very bad day, a very sad day. Okay? I can still have the joy of the Lord present within me and leading me through my choices and my decisions and my actions and my reactions. Okay? And so I'm not going to let the influences of this world in which I'm an alien and a stranger, I'm not going to let those influences determine who I'm going to be. I'm not going to react according to those things. I'm going to react according to what I have in Christ, and that comes from the joy that's there. And so grieved, distressed by various trials, heaviness through manifold temptations. That was what was bearing down on these Christians who were living in this joy of the Lord. And so what were some of these trials? What were some of these trials that they were going up against? Peter references a few things. Over in chapter 2, verse 12, he says, have your conduct honorable among the Gentiles, that when they speak evil against you, or when they speak against you as evildoers, they may by your good works, which they observe, glorify God in the day of visitation. And so it appears that they were being accused of doing wrong. Okay? And so here they were just trying to live for the Lord. Here they were just trying to honor Him. Here they were just trying to be the best they could be in this world where they didn't quite fit anymore. And they're being accused of doing wrong. Paul was a part of Stephen being stoned to death. And why was Stephen being stoned to death? Well, because he was being accused of doing wrong, wasn't he? He was being accused of violating the law. Why was Jesus put to death? He was a blasphemer of the law, and he's worthy of death. Jesus was the law. He was the author and originator of all those things. He was the fulfillment of the law, yet he was put to death because they said he violated the law. And so here we find this conflict. And so there's a reference to them being accused of wrongdoing. Chapter 4, verse 12. Chapter 4, verse 12. Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though something strange or some strange thing happened to you. And so there's a reference there to painful or fiery trials against them. And the word fiery there may simply just be an emphasis word to show the magnitude, and painful is another way that's translated. But some have speculated that possibly that word was chosen because of some things that had been going on and some things that they were aware of. Whether by the time of this writing or not, there are records in historical writings of Nero, who was persecuting Christians, who even had Christians bound and torched, lit up, burned to death as entertainment at his garden parties. Kind of like we're going to have a lamp here at the garden party. We're going to roast a Christian here. And so in our minds, those things are just beyond horror. But those are the kinds of things that, whether they were taking place yet, they did take place in the next few years at least. And so some believe that possibly the word is specifically chosen to reference that kind of intensity that either they might experience or perhaps they knew someone who had become a martyr against such in horrible, horrible conditions. And so the message of Peter starts with the proclamation that the abundant mercy and peace that's found in the new birth are not wiped out by hardships. And the joy of the Lord that these things of God's mercy provide within us cannot be taken away because of circumstances in this life. And then beginning in verse 7, he goes on to discuss the fact that painful trials I'm not advancing here. Can we go to the next slide? Can you advance that for me? There we go. I don't know if my battery's out or what. Painful trials can bring spiritual benefits. Painful trials can bring spiritual benefits. Look at verse 7 there. That the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. And so here we find that one possible benefit of painful trials, thank you, is refined faith. Trials, hardships, okay, we don't like to suffer. But one of the possible benefits of this painful trial can be refined faith. When my faith is put to the test, what's the outcome? What happens when my faith is challenged? Well, faith challenged will show where weaknesses are. Weaknesses will surface in the midst of our struggles. And he uses the example here of between faith and gold. Okay? And I've shared this, may have shared it with you, but I have a wedding ring on that's either 10 or 14 karat gold. I'm not sure which. And 24 karat gold is pure gold, considered pure gold, and you can't make jewelry out of 24 karat gold. Number one, the cost would be crazy, but number two, it's too soft. And so there's some 18 karat gold, but you can't get much beyond that. It's too soft. So if I took this ring and I put it in a little test and I put a heat under it, at a certain point, it's going to start to melt and it's going to start to boil or whatever. But there are alloys mixed in with the gold. There's 10 parts gold and 14 parts something else if it's 10 karat gold. And they have different melting points. And so you're going to have what they call dross that will surface. If you want pure gold, you just keep heating it and heating it and heating it until all the dross can be separated. You get a separation between the elements. And if you keep pulling off the dross, then you get more and more pure with the gold. And so the illustration here is when our faith is put under fire, something is going to surface. What surfaces? Is what surfaces something that's pleasing to God? Is what surfaces something that's going to strengthen my faith, that's maturing me spiritually? Or is what surfaces a spiritual weakness? Well, if a spiritual weakness begins to surface, that means that I have to let God do some work on me. My faith needs refining. My faith needs to be strengthened. And so as that impurity surfaces, if I let the Lord take that impurity away and I stay focused on Him, then I'm going to get stronger and stronger and I'm going to get more mature. And he used the word genuine. My faith will become more genuine by the trial, the test, the fire that faith is put to. And so painful trials can bring spiritual benefits. One of those is a refined, a purified, a made more genuine faith is a possibility that can come. And that's what God wants to be the result of these struggles that we go through. Isn't any growth in life like that? If you want to grow physically, there's going to be some pain involved. You know, if you want to strengthen a muscle, well, it's got to have some soreness behind it probably. If you want to strengthen endurance, there's going to be some running out of breath until you get to the next step, and on we go. And the same with our faith. And so refined faith is one outcome, but there's also patience or endurance or steadfastness. That's another benefit that can come from painful trials. We can grow in our endurance. We can grow in our steadfastness. It's part of that refined faith. In James 1, 2, and 3, he says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience or endurance or steadfastness." Our immediate reaction to trials is not to be filled with joy or to give thanks, is it? But we look at these things as an opportunity for us to grow. And then he says painful trials can bring praise, honor, and glory. As our faith is refined and as we grow and we endure more, the end result will be praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus. Warden in Truth for Today commentary says, in 1:7 as well as 1:5, Peter reminded his readers of the revelation of Jesus Christ. The return of the Lord was never far from the thought of Peter. When the revelation of Jesus Christ occurs, the proof or genuineness of the Christian's faith will rebound both to their own praise, glory, and honor and to the Lord's. Praise, glory, and honor will go to God because He's brought about holiness in the lives of His people. At the same time, He will infuse praise, glory, and honor into a people of genuine faith. Peter wanted his readers to follow the Lord's example. Hebrews 12:2 says, "Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before Him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God." And so Jesus went through the painful trials and suffering for the outcome. Joy remained all through the process, and the outcome was He qualified to be our perfect sacrifice and our perfect high priest, and He's seated at the right hand of the throne of God, and we want to go and be with Him in that place one day. And so Peter is reminding them of these benefits so that they can understand that circumstances don't change eternal things. Circumstances don't change eternal things. And now Peter focuses specifically on Jesus. Verse 8. "Whom having not seen, you love." Whom having not seen, you love. In John 20:29, Jesus told His disciples, "Because you've seen me, have you believed? Blessed are they who did not see, yet believed." And so these Christians that He's writing to would have been examples of that. They didn't see Jesus necessarily themselves, but because of the testimony they believe. And believing, he says, you rejoice with joy that's inexpressible and full of glory. That's what he said for these Christians. Those blessings of the mercy of God bring this joy that we can't even begin to express what joy means. In the midst of hardship and trials, to be able to have that joy and that peace of Christ that we can't fully comprehend and we can't fully explain, what a blessing that is. And then he says, receiving the end or receiving the outcome of your faith. The salvation of your souls. That's what we're moving toward. That's what we're living in, and that's what we want to be a part of when the culmination of all this physical world comes to an end. When Jesus is revealed from heaven, we will have come to the point where faith has become sight. We will have reached the end, the outcome for which we've labored and even suffered along the way. And then he talks about this salvation. This salvation in verse 10. Of this salvation, he starts with the prophets have inquired and searched carefully. Okay? He talked about the prophets who proclaimed this coming salvation, but they didn't know the time when it would be fulfilled. And ultimately, they came to understand that their message would be fulfilled at a later time. And so the things that they proclaimed, they did not get to participate in fully. Remember when Jesus talked about John the Baptist, what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, more than a prophet. And he said, yet the least in the kingdom is greater than he. John the Baptist died proclaiming Jesus, but he didn't get to participate in the fulfillment of the kingdom that Jesus came to establish. You and I do. And he's telling these Christians, you do. You get to be a part of what the prophets proclaimed for centuries. And then he also references the angels. And I find this interesting, fascinating. Angels desire to look into these things. What things? The good news, the gospel. It is so wonderful that angels eagerly long to look attentively. Or literally, they stoop over and look into these things. And Burton Kaufman put it this way, and why not? For their own number who had sinned, there was not a day of grace, no offer of pardon, no opportunity to seek a remedy. 2 Peter 2, verse 4. And so we talk about those angels who were bound in chains of darkness because of their rebellion. Yet here we are, a rebellious people who are participants in the kingdom, the eternal kingdom, the spiritual kingdom of Christ. And so that's his message to encourage the Christians in the face of persecution. And I think it's a pretty good message to encourage us as well. So, Lord willing, in 3 weeks from today, we'll pick back up here. Next week, Alan Hahn will be here, and Alan will teach on whatever Alan wants to teach on next week. 2 weeks from today, Doug Thompson is going to take the class in here, and he's going to teach on whatever he wants to teach on as well. And we'll pick back up with 1 Peter, but continue reading through 1 and 2 Peter during that time. Thank you.